Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared, and we have a couple knives with a couple broken tips. And we are going to talk about how I'm going to fix them. So here we have the cold steel Voyager. And let's pull this out for a second. We'll bring it back. First of all, the knife itself. This is a beast of a knife. It's a badass knife. I really like this one. These ergos right here. And this grip is so comfortable, so comfortable. It's nice and thick in the hand, so it fills the hand really, really nice. Then you have this taper right here that fits nicely in the palm. I even feel like I could grip it like this and do chopping with it. The knife kind of leans forward towards the thing you're chopping. And then you can always choke right up for nice push cuts. It's a big but extremely capable knife. I mean, it feels like a workhorse. I could see why people love these so much. And the lock is the triad lock. So if you don't know about the triad lock, strongest lock, arguably, I don't even know if it's an argument at this point, but it's the strongest locking mechanism on a folding knife. Extremely strong, snaps right in. And I think the only thing that could basically, that could compete with it is the shark lock on the Demco 8020. That's an incredibly strong lock too. But this one has a broken tip. Now, obviously this had to have been done from prying, I'm guessing. I didn't ask the owner, but I'm guessing it's from light duty prying. Now, this is AUS 10. Okay, so AUS 10 steel. It's not a very tough steel. So it's adequate toughness, so it's not like it's not that it's a fragile steel or anything like that. It's just compared to other steels, it's not a tough steel. Wouldn't be considered a tough steel. Now, that being said, you know, they bring the thickness of the spine. It does taper down to the tip, but it's, you know, like if you don't have that tough a steel, you can increase the thickness of the steel. And, you know, obviously it gets tougher, you know, the thicker it gets, you know, stronger, blah, blah, blah. So in this case, it's not that it had a dainty tip. It's not that the tip was fragile. It's just he was doing some stuff with it, and it happened to break. Now, I'm guessing because of the hardness that they bring this steel to, might have made it a little bit more fragile for things like prying and, you know, if you drop it and it hits a rock or hits ceramic, that's another case. This is a little bit more than I think what would happen from dropping it, but I guess it depends on how high you drop it from. But to increase the edge retention and make sure you have a long-lasting edge, they increase the hardness of the steel. The harder the steel gets, yes, the more fragile it gets. So, you know, but we want, because these are cutting tools, we want a long-lasting edge. We want an edge that lasts a long time. So in most cases, we're willing to sacrifice some toughness for some hardness. But, you know, it is what it is. Now, how are we going to fix this? So we're going to talk about this one, and then we also have the SPYDERCO YOJUMBO. Now, just so you can see right here, I have a SPYDERCO YOJUMBO myself, so you can see the difference on the tip. You can see that's a pretty good chunk that was taken off of that. And mine has already had an edge and everything put on it, but I've chipped the tip just slightly. It's pretty common on these, to be honest. The YOJUMBOs, they just, if you drop it and it hits the tip, you're chipping it, first of all. So I'm guessing that's what happened with this one. I've had many of them in for repair. Most likely it fell, hit a ceramic tile or a rock or something and just chipped. Now, it's, I don't want to say easy, but it isn't easy. You can make it easy to fix if you have the right tools. Now, I would, because I have two choices here. Well, actually three. I have three choices here. One, I take it off from the edge. So I remove all the steel all the way up to here, but then that means I remove that much steel all the way across the blade. So it'd probably bring the edge up to about right there. You know, because this would be the bottom of the new edge. Now, next thing you can do is you can remove it from the spine. Right, you remove it from the spine, so you would shorten the blade a little bit, but that would probably be the best way to go, because you're taking a little bit off of this, off of the front nose, but you're not taking anything off the edge. So your edge life is going to stay the same. Now, there's one more way you could do it, where you do both. You take a little bit off of the edge and a little bit off of the spine, and you kind of meet them in the middle. And that is, I think, would be in this particular case, that'd be the second best way to do it. I think the first way would just take it off the spine and then resharpen it. So, you know, grind this down right here, resharpen it, not a big deal. It'll still look the same. It'll look like, you know, it still has a fresh edge on it, or at least one edge, because we'll be sharpening it up too. It has a couple little chips in the edge. You can see one right there. Right there. But with this one, now this one, same thing. I can take it from the edge, but in this case, so like with this one, it wouldn't be that big of a, no, that one, that's mine. In this case, it wouldn't be that big of a deal to take it off the edge because it's a hollow grind. So even though I would take a lot off, it really wouldn't thicken up too much. I mean, a little bit, but not too much because it's a hollow grind. That's the beauty of a hollow. This case, we have a robust flat grind. So in this case, when we take it off of the edge, it's going to dramatically get thicker. So, you know, I could take it some from the edge and then put a new notch in and take some from the spine, or I could just take it from the spine, but then I would taper this down a little bit more. So, you know, I wouldn't round it as much because it's I guess it's a spear point. I guess you can call it a drop point. Call it whatever blade grind or blade shape you want, but I would remove it, and I would probably remove a little bit more in this area. So I'd take it like this and then start dropping it down right here. Start dramatically dropping it down to about right there, which I think would be probably the best way to go. And then just put a new fresh edge on it. That way we don't thicken up the edge too much, because we'd only thicken it up based on the edge we put on it, which wouldn't be that much steel, unless if we removed all this steel. Because to remove all this steel, holy cow, yeah, that's a lot of steel. Don't want to do that. So taper the spine, resharpen the edge. We'll keep the edge geometry the same and have a nice fresh edge afterwards. And not only will it still cut the same with the same geometry, well, maybe a little bit better, because I can lay back the edge, put a better edge angle on it that came from the factory. But to be honest, cold steel's edges aren't too bad. They do, I mean, depending on the knife, but in this case, I can see the angle is off from one side to the other. You can see how big the edge bevel is right there compared to this side. It's a little bit smaller. So, you know, the edge angle's off a little bit, but usually cold steel does a pretty good job with their edge angles. So for me, this is how I'm going to do it. Now, there's different ways you can do this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my belt. I'm going to use my Work Sharp belt sharpener. I'm going to use the Work Sharp belt, or the Work Sharp blade grinder attachment that goes to the Ken Onion Work Sharp sharpening system. So I'll use the belt grinder and I will belt grind this off. It'll go fast, nice, easy, smooth. And if I need to touch it up a little bit with sandpaper, I can afterwards to give it this, you know, satin finish that's on there already. I'll try to match it as much as possible, but, you know, do a little bit of handwork at the end. But, you know, to remove all the steel really fast, I'll just use the belt, knock it off. Now, if I was going to remove this edge right here instead, I would do the same thing. I've actually done a video on fixing a broken tip on one of these before, so you can watch that video if you want. And in that case, I took it from the edge. I took it from the edge because it wasn't this dramatic. But anyways, the next thing I would do after removing either from the edge or from here or both, then I would go to my stones and sharpen the edge. So I would use my belt for the steel removal and then use my stones for the sharpening. I could use the belt for the edge, but in my opinion, the belt just doesn't do as quality of an edge. And I don't think that's even my opinion. I think that's pretty well known. You know, stones will give you a better edge than a belt. quick look at the finished product. I technically didn't even need to put an edge on these because after I took this down, the factory edge was still perfect. I mean, aside from, I think one of these had a nick in the edge. I think it was this one. But I did wind up putting a new edge on it, obviously. And you can see the new satin finish that's on the spine right now. It's not perfectly matched, but it still looks really good. It's never going to match perfectly to their belt without me doing the entire spine of the knife, which I could have done, but I just don't think it's that big of a deal. This one matches really good because it did the whole thing. And it's side to side because I went from a different direction. So it looks really good. The edge is very sharp. Came out really good. And they're like brand new knives. You wouldn't even notice anything happened or that they had any tip damage or anything. And that's how you repair a broken tip, especially if it's significant enough to where you don't want to have to remove all the steel from the edge. Now, like I said, you can do half and half, but in this case, it was just way easier. Just remove it from the spine. It didn't change the blade shape very much. It didn't do much difference. And, you know, in this case, on both of these, I could have just left the factory edge on them and they would have just been brand new knives, basically. You know, you would have barely been able to notice from this little bit of satin finish, but only in the, you know, if you catch it in the right light. In reality, like in person, it's not even that bad, especially this one. Now this one, the jimp did get knocked down a little bit right there, but hardly. But there you guys go. That is how you fix a broken tip in many cases, not always. A lot of times I do take it from the edge, but only if the chip is very, very small. So it does depend. But there you guys go. Love you guys. Peace.